Okay, hey, this is Joe Torosian, and this is RamView for April 26th, 2022. Today we're going to talk Rams. Today we're going to talk the wide receiver room for the Rams. And today we're going to remember a couple of guys named Doug France and the Ram who was a Green Beret named Willie Miller. And I know a lot of people don't remember Willie Miller. I do. I saw him play when I was a kid. And so those are the subjects we're going to talk about today. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Joe Torosian, and I was a sports writer for 21 years. I still am kind of writing sports, I guess. I write books now. I've told you about them. You can see them on my webpage or on Amazon, Joe Torosian. This one's explicitly Christian. This one's my football book. I kind of married the two things that I do best together. I'm also a pastor of a small church in Burbank, and I try to be here every day for a few minutes talking about Ram football because it is one of my passions. And before we get into everything else, people have asked my background a little bit, but my background's largely irrelevant. If I was in the room, if I was going to be in that Hollywood Hills mansion that the Rams are going to be drafting from later this week, then maybe I would be something special, but I'm not anything special. I'm just a huge Ram fan who has a background in sports. And the years I was working and being paid as a sports writer was the years the Rams were in St. Louis. And so I didn't really get an opportunity to cover them. I covered XFL. I covered arena ball. I've covered basketball. I've done baseball. I've done all sorts of things. But college football, done bowl games. But never did the NFL. And as my friends and I started Mid-Valley Sports, the whole goal was to be ready when the Rams came back because we just knew even going back to the late 90s, that someday the Rams would be back and that we would be ready. As it is, I left a year before my friends got credentialed to cover the Chargers. Still ain't covering Rams football, but my friends at Mid-Valley Sports are covering the NFL. So it was a great journey. I just didn't get a chance to finish it with them. But I say that because my background is largely irrelevant. But after listening to a lot of podcasts about the Rams, there's a lot of podcasts out there. Some start and they don't go for a month. They take the off season. To me, this is an exciting time of year, but there are many really good podcasts and there are some great podcasts, but there's a couple things I've heard through the different threads that kind of just bugs me just a little bit. And this is the one thing that it is that in terms of background and passion is that writing sports, sitting in a press box, having food brought to me, bathrooms available, desk and chair, and all my stats provided for me by an intern. I'm spoiled to this day. For me to go sit in a stadium or a ballpark or an arena and only have basic access that everyone else has, I don't want to sit in a nice seat. I want to sit in the press box. I want to sit with my friends or sit where we're talking the game. And excuse me, everything is being provided. But one thing I never lost in all those years was appreciation. What a blessing it was to go to the ballpark, stadium, arena, and get paid. Even when I was doing high school football, to come along the sideline and, the best theater around is a high school football sideline. And I was blessed and privileged to do that like 1,000 times. And then you get paid to write about sports. And often at some of the bigger events, sometimes I wasn't even asked to provide a game story. I was asked to just provide a sidebar column, an opinion. How fun and what an honor. And so the last few weeks, listening to many good, sometimes great Rams podcasts, I was stunned by individuals claiming to be bored this time of year, just wanting the draft to be over and the season to begin and yada, yada, yada. And they weren't excited about anything. And it came across to me that they didn't love it. And you've got to love this stuff if you're going to do it and make people excited about it. When I worked as a youth pastor, that was like your number one job. It's let's be excited about this. And I have a friend who's a minister. He says, if I'm excited about it, I can make a bunch of teenagers excited about going and camping around a chemical toilet in the middle of Death Valley if I'm excited about it. And so we should be excited when we do these things. There's a lot of podcasts out there, and there's some that are just amazing, and I wish I can get to that level. But the only thing I know that I won't do is I won't appreciate right now the 15 to 20 people that click on and listen to this, the 20 subscribers. I'll always appreciate the fact that, man, someone cares and we get to talk football. And so you have to love it. And by and large, you should make every effort that everything you do should be something you love. When you're young, it should be about going to a place to do something you love. When you're older and in adulthood and maybe some options are limited, then that very day you should start, what can I do to get to a place where I'm going to love what I'm doing, or find something that I'll come to love. And money is irrelevant about that. And the approval of others is irrelevant about that. And so maybe I'm saying this to other podcasters. I don't think I have very many listen to me. Or you, if you think you want to do one, if you're blessed to just be able to do something like this, rejoice, huh? It's kind of out of John Adams. Rejoice evermore, right out of Scripture. Rejoice. This is fun. This is a blessing. And if you're not joyful, then you need to go on and do something else, like wash the garage or something. So no matter how you bring it about, a hobby, a passion, a career, also don't let anyone talk down to you, right? And don't let anyone measure your success by how many hits you got, if you love doing it, do it. I write books and not everybody likes them. None of them are bestsellers. Some do well and some do better than others. But the truth is I'm going to do what I love as often as I can. And then life isn't a life about looking at the clock and waiting for Friday. Life can be celebrated today. And again, this does have a lot to do with the Rams because we're doing something we love. Brilliant, successful people that you see can also be moronic. And as brilliant as they may be and as you are or may become, we never lose the ability to become moronic and say silly things or have a bad day. But be happy about your passions and appreciate what you attain. As long as you're happy, it really doesn't make any difference. When it comes to working with wife and family and kids, maybe it might not be about your happy. Your happy is service. But in the aspect of sports and this, rejoice, right? Also, as we get to business, rejoice about the Rams receiving core. I haven't spent a lot of time talking about the receiving core is because it's like talking about the Beatles, right? Oh, the Beatles are good. Okay, what else are we going to say? Beatles are great. Okay, now what else do I have to say? The Rams receiving core has been great since 2017 forward. Oh, man, do we remember the days of Brian Quick and Kenny Britt? Oh, my goodness. And it's still hard to recognize that Robert Woods is gone. Robert Woods leaving the Rams is like Wendell Tyler, I spoke about yesterday, leaving the Rams. One of my favorite players of all time. Because Woods did everything besides catching the ball. He ran the ball. He blocked. Just an excellent teammate. And so, yeah, I am sad about Robert Woods, but the team still has an excellent receiving core. And there's not much to talk about in one sense, and I haven't talked about it. There's talk that, because it's Sean McVay, he's always going to draft a receiver, but they could draft another receiver. And we're going to go through the list and who's on the team. And they could draft a receiver in the 6th or 7th round, or if somebody, again, there's always positions that fall, and as they fall, great value shows up in the 5th round or the 6th round, or maybe at 104. I doubt it, but maybe. So back in the fold, there's this guy named Cooper Kupp. Yeah, he is the 21st century of Steve Largent, right? He's not the fastest guy, but he's got great hands, runs great routes, gets great separation. He's always open. Steve Largent, right? But just a bigger, better version of him. The only thing that I was worried about last year when we were talking about Cooper Kupp is that the offense was so Kupp-centric, and even more so. But I remember saying in a column I wrote last year, saying, "Hey, you know what? It's great to getting the ball to Kupp, but sooner or later teams are going to figure this out, and Stafford's going to have to distribute the ball better." This is before Woods went down, before OBJ signed on. And sure enough, we get to the Super Bowl and everyone's gone except for Kupp, and they still can't stop Kupp. And my only concern, the two things that come up to mind when I think of Kupp going into this year is, one, always appreciate Cooper Kupp's blocking. Him and Woods were graded in the 80 percentile. I think Woods was high 80s as far as blocking wide receivers. And that is something Ram receivers have to do. And it's something their newer receivers are just average at, okay? And so I appreciate that about Cooper Kupp. I do have to say that I always worry about his knee, the knee he blew out in 2018, and then the end of 2020 when he injured it without any contact. But he held up great last year. Again, football, it's all depreciable assets, right? And I'm not expecting another year like he had last year. But the fact that he's on the field playing every day is going to be a great asset to the Rams, and he is a fantastic receiver. They made the deal. They signed the free agent Allen Robinson, and he's one of those guys that contests passes. And 6'3", 211. He's treated like a number one, but he's going to be a number two here. But also, I think in the Rams scheme, between Kupp and Woods, was there really a number one? Now, Kupp emerged last year, but in terms of talent and level, it's like, these guys are the same. Allen Robinson is not the blocker Robert Woods was. He's just not. Yeah, he's very middle of the road. I think he might even be just barely graded in the 50s according to PFF. But he contests. He catches contested balls. And the reason that's important is because when you look at Matt Stafford's first interception in the Super Bowl, the one that went to the end zone, which was essentially an arm punt, I know Van Jefferson was hurt, but this is not a Van Jefferson specialty. Van Jefferson's not the guy that you're going to say, go up and grab that ball. And more than one Ram fan and podcaster and commenter said, wow, Jefferson didn't do much to help Stafford out on that play at the end of the first half. And of course, everyone goes, oh, Stafford's throwing interceptions. And again, I'll say the guy who led the NFL in interceptions last year is the guy that won the Super Bowl. So really, folks, start doing a little analytics. Everyone loves the analytics, but he doesn't just begin and end with an interception. It's like, was it an arm putt? Was it tipped? Ben Skoranek in the second half. And Jefferson is not one of those guys. So Allen Robinson is a great move for the Rams, especially with OBJ in a little bit of limbo. The idea here is I do believe OBJ is going to come back, and that just makes this receiving core even more incredible. So I'm listing him as a guy that will be in the room as we come up to the 12-minute mark. OBJ was just amazing. I go back. The turning point for me wasn't even necessarily touchdowns. It was the catch he made on fourth down inside the red zone against Baltimore. If you remember that, the Rams were on the road. They'd had a bit of a rough game, and they were driving at the end. It was fourth down, and OBJ ran a little bit of an in route, broke out, and Stafford just put a bullet on him. And Stafford's gun, and it wasn't like it was a 20-yard pass downfield, but he hummed it, and OBJ caught it and just, manos de pegamento, hands of glue, and it was just a great deal. With all that said, I'm not anti-Van Jefferson. I like what Van Jefferson does, and he did break out a little bit last year, but the Rams are going to need to see more. I really think they're going to need to see more. This is his third year. He's got another year left before he becomes a free agent, and he might not be a second contract guy. Right now, would you give him a second contract? And I'm not anti-Jefferson. You need that guy that goes deep, and he goes deep well enough. Let's just skip any talk about a reunion with Deshaun Jackson, right? I hope so. So you go into this season with Kupp, Robinson, and Jefferson as your top three. Hopefully, by late November, you're getting OBJ back. So what's the rest of the receiving room look like? Well, Ben Skoranek. I've talked about him a lot. 7th round pick, contributed. He's a great blocker. He's not the best hands. He is a special teamer, and so that's where I would expect him to be, barring injuries. He stepped in and did a lot of blocking last year, especially as the tight end room started going down. He's a big guy. So Skoranek's there. And the real wild card here is Tutu Atwell. And the Rams went all the way into 57th overall and drafted him. And so many people are just writing off Tutu Atwell, writing him off. And the Rams drafted him for a reason. There's something they saw. And can the Rams whiff? Yes, it's proven they can whiff, and we'll talk about that here. Les Snead can make mistakes, but I believe this was in conjunction because him and McVay work so well. They see something in Tutu Atwell, and that's someone you might be surprised by this year. With his size and his speed. Every time I see him, I always felt the Rams were reaching for their own version of Tyler Lockett in Seattle, and maybe a little stronger this year, a little more weight, an opportunity to spend a year on the sidelines watching after his injury. I don't know. I'm optimistic about Atwell. I don't know where he fits in the room, but until OBJ comes back, he might be somebody that could be a little bit in a rotation there with Van Jefferson. If he can show any competence grasping the offense and going deep, think about that. I think his game could be a little more nuanced than Jefferson's. So I throw that out there. Jacob Harris was a Nelson Spruce Award winner last preseason. Nelson Spruce Award winners, if you remember Nelson Spruce in '86, him and Sean Mannion had a great camp. They helped the game against the Cowboys in the Rams' first game back in the Coliseum after coming back from St. Louis. And fans loved Nelson Spruce, plus he had a great name, but he never had an NFL career. He just had a great preseason. And Jacob Harris is one of those Nelson Spruce candidates where great preseason and then got hurt and didn't do anything. He's a special teams guy, but he's 6'5", 211, and he's great. They're great for great hands in the end zone, goal line plays. And he's listed as a tight end, but many people see him as going wide out to receiver. Also, you figure if he played tight end, he does know how to block a little bit. So he'd be an interesting one to watch. The other name that came up last year, and I don't expect much, I mean, he might not even make the rosters, J.J. Koski out of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. He came in when the punt room was a disaster. The punt return room was a disaster. And it was quickly, replaced by, was it Brandon Powell? Buddy Howell and Brandon Powell mixed up. And so I don't look for much out of J.J. Koski. Maybe he bounces back and forth between practice squad. But one name that does pop, and if you've seen it, you could just type in Warren Jackson on YouTube, and you'll get about a minute and a half tape of him at Colorado State. Rams love receivers from Colorado State. And Warren Jackson is 6'6", 215. He was undrafted and was with the Broncos last summer, and then they cut him. They were kind of deep in the receiver category, so they cut him. Rams signed him, and he kind of bounced back and forth between practice squad and such, and they signed him to a future contract. And so he's somebody that's going to be in camp with the Rams at 6'6", 215. He's not a burner. But he's a big threat with decent hands because of his size, and he might be somebody worth keeping an eye on. Warren Jackson, Colorado State. We haven't talked about him at all, but go on YouTube, look at his film, and you'll see that, okay, you can understand why a team would have an interest there. So for the receivers, again, we don't know what the Rams are going to do. I kind of flipped the switch yesterday, and I talked about, hey, it's a possibility the Rams could take a running back at 104. I do not think it's a possibility they'll take a receiver at 104 unless somebody amazing drops to them. Let's just say Drake London drops. Rams drafted him, okay? But I don't think Drake London's going to drop. So look for the Rams for depth, for special teams, for those type of things. Always to draft a receiver, 6th or 7th. It'll be interesting to see. And but I'm glad I did it because I hadn't talked much about the receiver room because the feeling is sometimes you just don't have to with the Rams. So one of the things that we've been getting a lot of clicks and comments about, and again, this is passion, labor of love, is on this date in Ram history. Talk about players' birthdays and draft picks and draft day trades. And we love talking about the hits and misses. But on this day in 1953, former Ram left tackle Doug France was born. He would have been 69 today. He passed away in 2016, but he was the one that replaced Charlie Cowan at left tackle for the Rams. He was all pro, a couple of Pro Bowls. The Rams took him 20th overall at Ohio State. He played a little tight end at Ohio State. He was with the team about 7 seasons, 75 through 81, 6 years as a starter after replacing Cowan. One of the things I know remember about Doug France is Doug France, maybe he changed later in life, but during his playing days, he was very outspoken. He talked about race relations. He also talked about he was edgy because when the Rams got booed at the Coliseum, this is the part where I've mentioned before, is that I've been at the Coliseum when I was a kid and heard the fans boo the team. And that was a rough year in 1979 going into the January 80 Super Bowl against the Steelers. And there's a column, I clipped it out and saved it for years, where Doug France basically they're doing an interview and he says, hey, this Super Bowl is not for the cheap Ram fans. It's for us as players because they booed us. They booed us out of the stadium. And it's true. They did. I was there. I saw it happen. And he was very outspoken. He also did some acting. If you ever saw the movie North Dallas 40, he's the one that plays L.C. Weeks. Heard him bad, Joe Bob, for the Chicago. I think it's the Chicago Bulls they call him in that one. I'm not sure what they call him. So check that out and you'll see Doug France there. He walked away in '82. Either he didn't sign or he didn't want to bring him back, because he did have issues with Rams management. And eventually they traded his rights in '83 to the Houston Oilers, and they got a draft pick in '84. 10th round, 253, and they used it to draft Norwood Van. If you're a Ram fan, you might remember Norwood Van as a special teams player. But that's Doug France's birthday. He would have been 69 today. And so it's good to remember some of these guys that were so fantastic for the team. The 20-minute mark, this is the one that I do remember this guy playing. I vaguely remember his background, but I did a little more reading, and his name's Willie Miller. And he was a guy that came into the NFL when he was 28. He was drafted in the 12th round out of Colorado State by the Cleveland Browns in 1975. He had a couple of years with them, busted his elbow in '77, got released, and the Rams signed him before the '78 season. He ended up leading the team in receiving in '78 with 50 catches. And part of that makes me think is, why did the Rams sign him and plug him in? He went to Colorado State, and the Rams, I might have to do a show on the Rams' history with Colorado State, especially during the Klosterman years. And the Rams brought him in. He had played. He wasn't a great player because he was 28 when he came in. He had 5 seasons with the Rams, retired after '82, bounced around a little bit with the USFL, and then went into high school coaching. But here's the story you may not know, is that Willie Miller spent 5.5 years in military service, and not just military service. We're talking Special Forces Green Beret. He won the Silver Star, the Purple Heart, and really fascinating. There was an article on one of the Colorado State websites I dug out, because I love this, right? When you have passion, you love it. He won a Silver Star he became a staff sergeant, Green Beret, and served in Vietnam, did 2 tours there. There's an account there where he saved his commander's life. I think it was his first sergeant's life, who was wounded, and he went out and put himself at risk, came under fire. He eliminated enemy as he went and rescued his superior and dragged him back, and he won the Silver Star for that. He was also wounded in the thigh with a shot, and won a Purple Heart for that. They talked about, because he would not talk about it, how he took a hit and they dug the bullet out, and he kept fighting through all that. As late as the mid '70s, he was still having nightmares about Vietnam, but he wouldn't talk about it because he kind of wanted to put that behind him. What an amazing hero, huh? What an amazing person Willie Miller was, and what an amazing life he's lived. He turned 75 today. He was born in 1947, Colorado State. And what a great career. The only bummer there is that he was injured in '79 and didn't play in the Super Bowl. So, you'd love to see those guys get that shot, but what a life, huh? 5 years, Special Forces, Green Beret, Silver, basically the NFL's Audie Murphy, man. And so I don't think Willie Miller will ever know my name, but we know his, and we should all remember and be grateful for guys like Willie Miller, and to keep passing it forward and teaching high school, and coaching high school ball. What a great guy. As we come up 23-minute mark, I want to end this real quick here. Chris Long on this day, in 2008, was the 2nd overall pick in the draft. Good player. The Rams Hall of the Very Good, right? And of course, he suffered like James Laurinaitis from 2008 to 2015 with all those teams, and he didn't make it to Los Angeles, but he did finish his career with the Patriots and the Eagles, won 2 Super Bowls back to back. So good for Chris Long. And I think his dad was a little bit better, although I did think his dad was a little bit overrated too. Boom. How about that? But Chris Long was very distinguished for the Rams, and it was one of the few draft picks they hit on, even though it was number two overall. He was a hit at his position. And so remembering Chris Long, drafted on this day. On the same day in 2008 draft, the Rams spent the number 33 overall pick on a wide receiver named Donnie Avery. Do you know who Donnie Avery is? I know who Donnie Avery is, but no one else on the planet knows who Donnie Avery is, because I think in 5 years he was gone. He spent a couple years with the Rams. Remember what the Rams were working off of, right? You're working off the greatest show after Isaac Bruce. You're working off of Torrey Holt, Ricky Prohl, Oz Hakeem. You're working off all these guys you've brought in. There's a receiver named Kevin Curtis that kind of started a little bit for the Rams, that slot spot, and very prehistoric Danny Amendola or Wes Welker. So the Rams had receivers, right? So they should have known receivers. And Donnie Avery just was not a guy that panned out to anything. And they spent 33 overall, the second round, first pick in the second round on Donnie Avery, and it didn't pan out. Can you imagine what the second pick, the first pick in the second round would be to the Rams today? Like gold in their hand. Of course, they'd probably trade out of it. Funny story, I saw this on Twitter, is former Locked On Rams host Sosa Kremenjas, who's on Twitter, and I don't have to kiss his keister because he doesn't need me to kiss his keister. Actually, he has probably done the best. He's left the Rams in January. He left Locked On in early January. He was probably the best podcaster I've heard because he's all business, all information. When you come to something like this, you want someone, their passions to come through, and for them to give you something you can't get anyplace else. And Sosa Kremenjas is one of those guys, and he's moved on to better things. But he had a line. He says, imagine those poor souls that stay up all day, wait up all night on the third round, in the third round of the second day of the draft, waiting for the Rams to make their pick at 104, only to find out that Les Snead traded out and went back to the third day. I thought that was funny because it's so true, right? It's so what the Rams would do. And speaking of trades, on this day in 2012, the Rams and Cowboys swapped picks in the first round. The Rams with the number 6 pick, which is one of the ones they inherited when they made the trade for RG3, they moved back to 14 and took a number 45 from the Cowboys, so the Cowboys could move up to the 6th spot. And they drafted Morris Claiborne, LSU, bust, big bust. I remember the day that draft happened and the big smile on Jerry Jones's face. He thought, oh, man, I got a winner here. And they moved up. And, of course, Les Snead made the deal, right? And was Morris Claiborne. And the Rams ended up getting Michael Brockers. Big hit for Les Snead's first draft. All right. I love Michael Brockers. Plus, he wore number 90. It's like a early day, modern day Larry Brooks. But here's what's interesting. Besides swapping picks, the Rams picked up a second round pick in that Michael Brockers trade with Dallas to swap number ones. And they had the number 45 overall. And the very next day is they dealt that 45th pick overall to the Bears for number 50 and number 150. Les Snead doing his things. Now, here's the funny thing. The Bears took that number 45 pick and turned it into Alshon Jeffrey, okay? Alshon Jeffrey, his career may be on the downside, but that was a receiver the Rams could have used, right? Alshon Jeffrey had a nice career, and it's waning now. But what a nice career Alshon Jeffrey had. Also, he was pretty good with my fantasy team. But the Rams ended up trading that number 45 pick for a number 50 and a number 150. How marvelous would it be to have a number 50 pick or a 150 pick in the 4th round this year, which would be maybe 4th round, maybe 5th round. That would be a high premium pick. But with those picks in that 2012 draft, the Rams drafted running back Isaiah Peed. Remember Isaiah Peed? Yeah, it's hard to remember Isaiah Peed. At number 50 in the 2nd round, bust. And then they drafted another guy, I believe he was a linebacker, Rokevius Watkins at 150. Remember Rokevius Watkins? Hurt his ankle his first year, and within 2.5 years, gone with the Rams. So it's interesting. You can make the trades to move back, collect draft picks, but unless you hit on them, it's no bueno. So in 2012, it's clear that in his first year, it was clear that Les Snead was still processing and perfecting this craft of draft day trades. And maybe Sosa Kremenjas is right. Maybe this is the year, one of the years where the people stay up all night to see who the Rams pick at 104. I know I'm going to be one of them. And then have somebody go to the counter and says, there's been a trade. The Los Angeles Rams have sent the number 104 pick to Miami. Miami's on the clock. And it's like, what? And then you got to go back to Kevin Costner and watch draft day or something. All right, folks, that's it. I went long today, but it was fun stuff. Hey, Willie Miller deserves an extra 5 minutes and such. So thank you so much. I'm Joe Torosian, and please hit like, subscribe, check us out as we turn this. Also, we're podcasting on Spotify. This audio is going to Spotify under RamView with Joe Torosian. So check it out and help us build our mark there. Check out my books, and thanks for clicking on and for all your best. Hey, take care.